City Conversations. I see many familiar faces. Thank you for joining us, and for those of you who are new, thank you for joining us. I'm Michael Alexander. I'm the director of SFU City Conversations. SFU City Conversations is presented by SFU Public Square. And we want to thank our sponsors, SFU Vancouver, the Center for Dialogue, and the SFU City Program. We want to acknowledge that this event takes place on unceded traditional Coast Salish territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Who's new here? Who hasn't been here? Wonderful, wonderful. Let me explain how this works. This is a very formal lecture room. There will be no physicians doing dissections in front of you. Don't worry, right? Despite the formal look of the room, please come on. We do not have speakers, and we do not have an audience. We have presenters, and we have you who are the participants, and that's the key to City Conversations, is your participation. Presenters are going to briefly frame the conversation. You get 7 minutes each, and you give them the time, right? So most of the time is for your questions, your opinions, your observations. The point is to encourage conversation. If you brought your lunch, thank you very much. It's not rude to eat your lunch at City Conversations. It's a lunchtime event, right? If you are tweeting, it's #CityCon. And if you are not on our email list, there are email lists that will go around each row. Please put your name down, and we will send you announcements on each and every one. We're working on some really interesting ones coming up. But today, whoops. Oh dear, we're missing a slide. So I'm just going to have to wing it. Today, the topic is co-housing one piece of our housing? In months to come, in fact, probably well into next year, we're going to look at ways to resolve our housing affordability and accessibility issues in Vancouver. Last June, we took our first cut of it. We examined how townhouses and row houses could be the missing middle between single-family homes and towers. Right? There's a gap, as we've heard from many people. Today, however, our conversation is about Vancouver's first co-housing development. This is not co-op housing, this is co-housing. Where in the Kensington neighborhood, 31 families live on 3 double lots that would normally fit 3 dwellings, plus up to 3 secondary suites and 3 lane houses. So it's 31 families versus somewhere between 3 and 9 on the same pieces. This shared living, it's not for everybody. I don't think anybody would question that. But there are now a dozen co-housing projects all over BC. And for those who value community over single-family privacy, it's an option that's somewhere between condos and apartments. Later this month, the city is hosting a housing summit that's going to look for answers to the city's housing problems and our housing needs. Should co-housing be part of the mix? That's part of the question. So our presenters, our Vancouver Housing co-founder and resident, Erica Stevens-Rennie, and Ezra, who may pipe up
as well.
Development consultant and urban planner, Michael Mortensen, And our honored Herb Auerbach, also a real estate development consultant. For now, however, I'd like to just ask for a few seconds of pause because Vancouver lost somebody very, very, very important this week. Bing Tom, perhaps the most honored and respected living architect, died in Hong Kong, where he was visiting his project, which is the biggest thing that Hong Kong has seen in many, many decades. He had a brain aneurysm, died very quickly, and let's just take a few seconds to remember somebody who was a real gift to Vancouver. Thank you. Erica, I think you wanted to get things underway.
So we're going to do a bit of a hybrid presentation approach. Can I get some help and just jump into slide 20 of my presentation? So we're doing a bit of a hybrid because Michael had an idea of which way we should do, and we had an idea of which way we should do. So we followed the co-housing process, which is brainstorm, discuss, decide. And in co-housing, typically decide using a consensus-based approach. So we came to that approach. The approach we've used is that I'm going to do a little FYI on what co-housing is, and then Herb's going to talk about some of the history, Mike's going to chat about some of the interesting models, and then I'm going to talk about my experience in Vancouver co-housing. So we're going to do a bit of the what is co-housing first. I'm really curious to know who knows what co-housing is. Okay, cool. So it's good we're doing this. So what is co-housing? Co-housing is semi-communal housing, typically clusters of single-family or multi-family sort of apartment-style homes, private homes, shared around a community space. And these are some pretty common designs that co-housing communities around the world use. So you can see the linear model. This is pretty similar to Vancouver co-housing. You'll see soon that the CH at the top of the diagram there is the common house. And all those blue boxes there are private homes. They all sort of filter into a common courtyard, which then enters into the common house. You can see there's a central courtyard model. It's kind of in the round. That's a model you see a lot more in both Denmark and in California. And then dispersed. This is a suburban co-housings often look a lot more like this. If you go out to the Barrow Eco Village, I understand it looks a bit more dispersed like this. And then a hybrid model, sometimes retrofit co-housings, which is where you take existing buildings and you make them into co-housings. They end up looking a little hybrid like this. And I imagine that if you're looking at co-housing in a tower, it might end up looking a little bit more like a hybrid approach. So that's, and I guess the hybrid approach, you might see the common house on a different floor than all of the homes. You might see not exactly a central courtyard, but sort of making use of space and making sure there are gathering spaces along the way so that residents can bump into each other. Making it work socially is really one of the key pieces to making a successful co-housing community. And I have this slide, Michael, I think I'm stealing your thunder a little bit, so I won't spend a lot of time on this slide, but this is to sort of say co-housing exists in this sort of liminal space between cooperatives and strata condos. So I would say we've stolen some of the best ideas of stratas and some of the best ideas of cooperatives and mixed in some of the pieces around deliberate democracy and consensus-based decision-making and community building. And we've come up with a model of housing that is kind of the both end of cooperative and strata living. So I won't talk you through this. Michael's going to spend a bit of time talking you through that, but I think I will leave it there for now and turn it over to you, Herb.
Well, I think it's important to say that cooperatives and condos and rental can all be applied to co-housing. In other words, it's the ownership issue of co-housing. But the real object of co-housing is communal living and people living together and sharing facilities and sharing operations. but it's not a new idea. Every once in a while, a new buzzword comes along, and we all latch onto it as if this is the panacea. And as Michael said, it's not the end-all of housing. It's one link into the housing market. It's not necessarily the answer to affordable housing. So I want to talk a little bit about the context of cohousing, and where it came from, and some of the pluses and minuses. And I'm not here to diss it. I think cohousing is in fact one element, albeit a very small one. Cohousing started about, 30,000 years ago when two families moved into the same cave together. And of course, we've had cohousing amongst our Aboriginal people for thousands of years. Whether you were Haida living in a Haida house, or Iroquois living in a longhouse made with lodgepoles, or Inuit living in an igloo where you shared housing and you shared activities. In other words, not only did they share a living space, but they also shared the chores of cooking and hunting and protection and what have you. After that, for about many, many years, housing was built mostly for people by royalty, by administrations, by governments, by the church, whether it was a monastery for monks or housing built within a feudal town. And it wasn't until closer to the Industrial Revolution that people started to build their own housing. And you didn't have anything like real estate developers until about 1600s when people were building housing, except for Rome, where there were real estate developers in 100 AD who built tenements, 10, 12, 14 stories, and rented them out until Emperor Augustus said you can't build higher than 6 stories. Until the 1800s when we had steel and elevators and so on. But in any event, then what happened? Then you had historically the Reformation, and Martin Luther began to tell people you didn't have to die to go to heaven. You can make heaven on earth. And so people started to look at how they could make heaven on earth in their own communities, and out of that grew the utopian movement. And there's something linked between the utopian movement in the late 1800s and the early 1900s and what we see in cohousing today. It's an ideal way to live that people are seeking. In the late 1800s, that manifested itself in places like company towns that were built by utopian company owners like New Lanark in Scotland, for example, built a utopian town around the cotton mill. In North America, there were two notable utopian towns. One, Lana del Rio, north of Los Angeles, which was built by socialists who were going to have a new way of living, shared living, collective living. It was designed by one of America's first women architects, Alice Constance Austin, who said houses wouldn't have kitchens. We're going to have communal kitchens, because doing cooking and laundry was demeaning women. She was a very avid feminist, apart from being a socialist and a utopian. And so out of this came the utopian movement, and the new manifestation of it is, in post-war era, is cohousing, which started in Denmark, which was already a very homogeneous community, used to socialist ideas and communal living. And that started about 1600 and came to North America, Canada, and the United States in the 1990s as a potential housing form where people would get together and create their own housing because it didn't exist on the marketplace, either in form or in terms of the way they wanted to live. I remember going to a summer co-housing place where my family rented a room in a farmhouse with 12 other families, big communal kitchen, communal living room, and it was kind of summer co-housing. It was the way we were able to get away for the summer. And every family had their bedroom. We all lived in one bedroom. My mother cooked in a big communal kitchen with other women, and they could commune with us. Another form of cohousing I just want to tell you about before I stop is that before the Nazis came to power, devotees of Rudolf Steiner came to North America to build Campbell Village, which was a form of co-housing for people who wanted to live with people who were disadvantaged. And so these families got together and built a co-housing community called Campbell Village. And they all lived together, they worked together, they cooked together, they farmed together. And it's a kind of communal, so it's not a new idea.
Wonderful, thanks, Rick. Millennia of history.
That was 2 millennia in 7 minutes. That's darn impressive.
Pretty good acceleration. A little bit about me. I think I'm interested in the topic. I did my in retrofitting suburbs at UBC with Walter Hardwick. I was with Walter's SFU. Did some work with CMHC, managing half the non-market operating agreements in British Columbia, co-ops, non-profits, on-reserve housing, First Nations housing, off-reserve. And so I've had a long interest in affordable housing. I worked for some time with the City of Vancouver as a major projects planner, and then kicked over to the private development side as a developer for the last decade, working in Vancouver and also in London and Edinburgh. Just back last month, no, 2 months ago, from England, made my personal Brexit. And now I'm running my own firm, Plan Living City, the Livable City, and doing a bit of writing as well. So I've got some articles on housing, affordable housing, other types of solutions to the region's housing problems. And I really want to fuse, I think there's some really interesting synergies between development, private developers, and affordable housing advocates, particularly with co-housing as one of the solutions. I see co-housing as a kind of a continuum of shared living. On the left is a strata that I lived in for some time downtown with my family at the Palisades, strata condominium, and as Erica said, there's this sort of interesting fusion between the type of tenure of strata ownership and then a really intentional, self-organized development collaboration that people do to create their own housing and co-housing. In the middle of this, we've got Quayside, an example from North Vancouver Quayside Village. As Herb said, there's a dozen models in British Columbia now. I think it's going to grow. When I write about this, it's interesting. I posted something on Facebook on co-housing, and I immediately got about 6 responses from friends of mine saying, "Are you doing this? Because I'm in." and they're great people, architects, people in my profession. I mean, really capable people. We could do this. We could do this. You know. And I'm in. I think this is a really great idea. I want to do this. And the more I talked to a gerontologist doing work at UBC, says, you know, this is a really interesting model for people aging who want alternative ways of living other than a single family home. So I think it's really, really interesting. And then on the other end of the spectrum, moving to really sort of market models, you see now emerging in major cities in the world where they have housing affordability problems. This idea of this new sharing economy, and this is an example called it is kind of co-housing, but it's market-driven. It's a developer doing this, creating living opportunities where people are sharing not only kitchens but living space, living rooms, as a way of getting some economy or convenience or shared workspace, networking, all sorts of things. Looking at the strata condo, the one I lived in at the Palisades, designed by James Chang, developed by E. Gillespie. One of the early projects he did, 277 units, 2%, 3% of the space is shared in terms of the gym, common lobby, amenity room, common area gardens, and quite lovely, luxurious. Looking at Quayside Village, again, the real differentiator here, and the differentiator for co-housing, is that it's self-organized. It's an intentional community. People are the developer. You take the developer out of the equation. Profit in a typical market development project is between 15% and return on cost. You probably spend another 5% of revenue on marketing for a large project. So potentially there's a savings of 20 to 30% in terms of that affordability gap. Take the profit out and you keep the market. B-side's about, I think, between 10 and 20% shared space, common lounges. But people have their own private developments. Wow. So there's a continuum at the other end, collective, you can look up. And there it is there. When you share more space, you don't need as big a unit. That's essentially the model. And everything from a shared single detached house, they don't share anything, all the way down to these collective living arrangements. But really, co-housing, the differentiating thing is the self-organizing principle. So there's Alexis de Tocqueville, who came to the Americas in the 1800s, and he said, wow, really defining feature of North American society is our ability to self-organize to solve our problems. Where people in Europe are waiting for monarchs to solve their problems, or waiting for government, people here self-organize. I think that's the really key differentiator. And it flips the model. It puts the market at the front. Typical development model is, I find a site, I come up with a concept, I get my planning done, then I take it to market. Co-housing, the market. You begin with the market. You don't need to market. There are a lot of people who want to do this. You set your financing, you find a site, you get your planning, you do building. It's fundamentally a different thing to, I think, council. You know, a developer comes and says, I want to double the density on this site or triple the density on this site. That's one thing. In this model with co-housing, with the 30 people have show up to council saying, we want to live here. It's a much different model. Economies of space and scale, 76 units. Do we really need 76 of these? Erica can talk about Vancouver co-housing. I went and had dinner, loved the experience, great facility, and she has a lot of lessons that she can talk about in terms of the way they organize. But really, I wanted to touch on risk and profit. I have a minute. The trade-off, if you're gonna save on profit, is that you accept the risk, and that common people, lay people, all of a sudden take on the role of developers. You have to go in with your eyes open. There are risks. So this is Quayside, and they were one of the early buildings that need retrofitting for water ingress, water building failure. It's a sophisticated game once you start breaking the form from single family to multi-family. There are risks, and you have to manage them. And Erica can talk about that. So my conclusions, it is part of the solution. There's untapped demand. Lots of people want it. It requires an enormous amount of organization and risk management. We need more models, like the ones Erica has built, for repetition and perfection. And we need more support from local governments. Erica can talk a little bit about the demands of the city. And I think there are a lot of synergies between the development industry, which is, we manage risk really well, and with people who want to do more co-housing. So I'll leave it at that and turn it over.